What's up, guys? Welcome back to the garage. Gerald here with you. Thank you so much for joining me again this month for another edition of the Letterboxd Lowdown. This is a series in which I rank and count down all of my first-time watches for the month. Most of them are new movies, but some of them are movies that were blind spots for me that I just saw for the first time. So whatever the case may be, there are 23 films that I saw in the month of June that I'm going to rank for you right now from the worst to the best. Let's get into this month's Letterboxd Lowdown. All right, guys, welcome back to my channel. As I said, the Letterboxd Lowdown is a series where I rank all of my first-time watches. So in the month of June, I did watch 23 films for the very first time. I'm going to rank all of them right now. I'll talk about each of them a little bit. There's a lot of movies that fall in that 3-star, perhaps 3.5-star range, but there's only a handful, like 3, I think, that are better than 3.5 stars for me in June. We'll get there eventually, though. 23 films to rank. Let's get started. The worst of the bunch by a million miles that I'm going to spend hopefully very, very little time on is a film from 2009 that I had never seen. It was on HBO Max. It popped up as one of those things where it recommended it to me. Why, I have no idea. But it's Van Wilder Freshman Year from 2009. This is a prequel to the classic National Lampoon's Van Wilder that I love, starring Ryan Reynolds. Jonathan Bennett plays a young Van Wilder, graduating from high school and entering into his freshman year at Coolidge College. And we get to kind of see the transition from high school Van to college Van. This movie is absolutely horrendous. It's missing Ryan Reynolds, obviously, which is the biggest thing. You can't cast an iconic character. Ryan Reynolds made Van Wilder his own in that movie. Literally no one else can play it without undergoing extreme criticism. And I feel bad for Jonathan Bennett in that respect. But aside from that, the writing, the screenplay is the most misogynistic, sexist, and frankly racist script that I've seen, especially to have come out in 2009. This is a film that you would have thought maybe would have come out in the 80s and just didn't age well. They released this a little over 10 years ago, guys. Their head was not in the right place. This is a horrible movie. Please do not watch Van Wilder's Freshman Year. It is not only the worst movie that I saw in June, it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. And it ranks number 23, dead last, for the month of June. At number 22 is a film that's only slightly better than Van Wilder's Freshman Year. Over on Letterboxd, I gave this one 1 star. I do like the creativity of the story. I feel like the story could be something. It's called Safer at Home, which is a Hulu original movie. What this movie does and why I gave it 1 star is because I think the premise is pretty cool. Although I don't know that I really want to see this premise quite yet. It's a little too soon. But what it does is it imagines a future. I want to say it's like 2 years in the future, like 2023, I think. COVID is still around. Not only is it around, it's like deadlier than like the Black Plague. Killing people at a rapid rate. Millions of people are dropping live flies. Going outside of your house, you're almost guaranteed to get it. It's in the air, that kind of thing. So this group of friends are isolated. They're in their respective homes. There's 4 different homes that are featured in this. And they do the host thing, the Shudder original that I loved about 6 months ago, where it's a Zoom call, right, that goes wrong. So these guys are on a Zoom call. Something happens. I won't give away any spoilers because it's a brand new movie. If anybody does want to check it out, it becomes this kind of almost like a crime thriller at that point. It's got elements of horror kind of mixed in there. I mentioned Host. But it's just so cheesy. Like, the dialogue is horrible. The acting is even worse. So it was just a story that I felt like could have been good, but the execution was horrible. The acting was atrocious. I'm sorry. I did not like Safer at Home. That's my number 22 for the month of June. At number 21 is a big release. It was a big release in the month of June. It did a ton at the box office, too. I actually watched it at home on HBO Max. Part of their deal with Warner Brothers and releasing films in the theater and on HBO Max the same day, which has come under some fire, but I actually appreciate it, and I've kind of enjoyed it because I can't get to the movies as frequently as I used to, so I kind of like it. But that's probably about the only thing I liked about The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. I gave it 2 stars over on Letterboxd, and I really did that for Vera Farmiga's performance. I thought she was really good, and I thought some of the special effects were unique and new that we had not seen in the series yet. But in my review on Letterboxd, I actually said whose idea was it to turn this beloved religious horror franchise, The Conjuring, into an episode of Law & Order. This becomes an episodic police drama, almost, like a detective story. And it's not The Conjuring. It's only The Conjuring by name. This is a very different movie. I almost feel like if they had just called this movie The Devil Made Me Do It, and then we had the Warrens kind of making cameos and being in the story, being part of the story, but not trying to make it a Conjuring film, it may have worked a little bit better because expectations would have been different. James Wan is not here, Michael Chavez is. And I like Michael Chavez, I like some of the other stuff that he's done. This just did not work for me, and I think it's because of my expectations from this franchise as being one of the best in horror history, in my opinion. And this one really hurt this franchise, which is tough. One entry, I feel like, is going to bring this franchise down a little bit. It's still great. The first two, I feel like, are both borderline masterpieces. And I think the sequel is just as good as the original, which is a bit of a hot take I've found out as of late. I actually reviewed this movie with my buddies, the Epic Film Guys. I will drop a link down below if you want to head over and listen to their show and check out that review. But The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, it's not good. Stay away from it, even if you're a Conjuring fan. Especially if you're a Conjuring fan, stay away from it. All right, now at my number 20 is a movie that was a blind spot for me. There's a couple of those on this list that are older films that I just never saw. This is a movie that came out in 1999 called Stir of Echoes, starring Mr. Kevin Bacon, who we all know and love. I came to it too late. There are a lot of comparisons made to this film to The Sixth Sense, which actually came out the same year. I want to say it came out about a month or two before this movie. Shout out to my buddy Travis over on Wait You Haven't Seen. He does a show where he has a guest on who's never seen a movie that they should have seen. I went on his show and discussed it with him. I felt bad because I just didn't like this movie. I didn't connect to it. It wasn't believable for me. A lot of you have probably seen Stir of Echoes or you're familiar with it, so I won't spend a ton of time on it. Kevin Bacon gives this performance that I feel like in the 90s probably worked. But watching it now in 2021, I just thought was a little too over the top. It was a little too cheesy. And it just didn't play well for me. It wasn't the type of role I like to see Kevin Bacon in personally. But basically, he gets hypnotized. And upon being hypnotized by his sister-in-law, different rules are introduced that don't make any sense. And there's a lot of different threads to the plot that never kind of are woven together properly. And I mentioned that on the review I did with Travis as well. It was a scatterbrained plot. The Sixth Sense was a very cut and dry, narrative from point A to point Z. This kid can see dead people. He can talk to dead people. No one knows why, but because that's happening and because that's his ability, this is the story that plays out and the story that we get, which leads to one of the greatest plot twists in movie history. Stir of Echoes has that kind of in the beginning, but then it introduces this different thing. And I'm trying not to give too much away. It's a 1999 film. But then it introduces this other thing. And then Kevin Bacon has multiple abilities, it seems. And you don't know where these abilities are coming from, even. You're supposed to assume it's from the hypnotism, but that's not how hypnotism works. Even I know that, and I'm not a scientist. It was a strange film. I didn't hate it. I gave it 2 stars. I love Kevin Bacon. I love seeing him. 90s Kevin Bacon's always top-notch. He took his shirt off in this film, so that's cool. But Stir of Echoes fell a little flat for me. I'm glad I corrected the blind spot, but it wasn't one of my favorite movies. Another brand new release I'm going to rank at number 19, which was just overall a disappointment for me because I had super high hopes for it. But it's another Hulu original. There's actually a few of those. I went through Hulu and watched some movies this month. But it's called False Positive, directed by John Lee. This is a horror/thriller film in the style of like a Rosemary's Baby. Pierce Brosnan has a role that he chews pretty well in this film. Justin Theroux is also in this movie as her husband. Pierce Brosnan was cool to see in this kind of different role for him, this really kind of sinister, almost like a mad scientist type role. But he has a practice where he helps people with infertility. He helps couples that have issues getting pregnant, and he artificially inseminates her, and she does become pregnant. But we start to learn things about his motive, and possibly the baby might have, I mentioned Rosemary's Baby, so you can probably fill in the blanks there. I don't want to give too much away. It's a brand new movie. These are spoiler free. It tried a little too hard, in my opinion. I felt like it could have told the story much simpler and much more minimalistic. The performances were really good. I mentioned Pierce Brosnan already. Alana Glazer plays our lead character Lucy in this film, the pregnant woman, and she is awesome. She's a comedian, actually. And that was one of the things that impressed me most about her. She was on a series on Comedy Central several years ago. I don't know if it's still running because I haven't watched it in a few years, but I used to watch it, called Broad City. It's like a sketch comedy show that she does with another girlfriend of hers. And they are a dynamic duo on that show, and she is hilarious. Just a great comedy writer. So to see her kind of take on this role of this like horror movie where she really is a frightened kind of character that's just questioning her existence and reality and her pregnancy and her marriage. And again, I don't want to give anything away, but she does it's a really layered performance, especially for someone that I had only known from comedy. So I love Glazer's performance. I love Pierce Brosnan chewing scenery, and some of the aesthetics were really cool too. Kind of the horror aesthetic that I enjoy from like a Rosemary's Baby. But otherwise, I gave it 2.5 stars. It wasn't the best movie, and unless you're into that kind of thing, I can't recommend it. I love Brian Bertino. I love him. He did The Strangers Pray at Night. He's one of my favorite young horror directors. I love everything he's done. There's this movie that on Amazon Prime, it had it listed as 2021. I went ahead and rented it because I'm like, holy crap, Bertino has a 2021 film. I didn't even know about it. But on Letterboxd, it says 2016. So I guess there were some problems releasing it in the US, and it just got released here recently. But it's actually an older film, about 5 years old, called The Monster. Again, we have another, I gave it 2.5 stars on Letterboxd. Another situation where, in my opinion, the premise sounds amazing. It sounds enthralling. It sounds very simple, which I love in my horror movies. A very simple narrative, or at least it sounds that way. Basically, this mom and her 10-year-old daughter, their car breaks down in the middle of the night, in the rain, in the middle of nowhere, in the woods, basically. And there's this mysterious monster lurking in the woods close by and kind of stalking them. And their car won't start. There's no civilization around them. It's literally in the middle of nowhere. So what do? How do they survive? They only have their vehicle there. And some other stuff plays out. I won't give it away. It is, like I said, it just got released in the States recently. It's available to rent on Amazon Prime. I think it's worth a watch for Bertino's direction and the aesthetic of the film. The monster, the creature feature aspects were a little lackluster. The payoff wasn't as great as I was hoping for the monster in the movie. But there's some good jump scares. The child actor actually gives a really good performance, a 10-year-old girl. It was okay. I mean, it was one of those films where I was like, it's fine. It's okay. My number 17 was a film I watched with my kids this month called Wish Dragon, which is a Netflix original. This is another perfect example of it's fine, it's okay. I did give this one 3 stars. I really liked the animation, and it was a feel-good movie. This is a movie in the similar vein of like an Aladdin, where he gets this dragon that can grant him wishes. 3 magical wishes, 1 life-changing adventure is the tagline. You kind of get the idea. I don't need to spend a ton of time on this one. The animation is stellar, and the story was cute, and we are familiar with it from stories like Aladdin. So I really dug Wish Dragon. I don't think it was anything new, right? I don't think they brought anything new to the story. Maybe updated animation and effects. But as far from a storytelling aspect, it's pretty bland. It was pretty formulaic in that way. So that's why Wish Dragon's a little bit lower for me, but that's my number 17 for the month of June. If you want to check it out, it is on Netflix. We're into the 3-star movies here. My number 16, it's always a good month when you can mention Mr. Nicolas Cage, right? And I got to correct another pretty recent blind spot for me, and I watched Willy's Wonderland. A lot of people got to see this, I believe, in April when it was initially released, and I just saw it this month. Nicolas Cage doing his thing. Now, what's interesting about this movie is he doesn't say a word in this film. And he's only referred to in the movie as the janitor. So we don't even get his name, and we get literally no dialogue from Mr. Cage, which is interesting. To my knowledge, I don't think he's done that before in his career. So could he pull off a performance without being able to speak or give lines? Yes, he can. This movie's a lot of fun. It has its flaws, and it's a very repetitive, kind of redundant film. I don't want to give away any spoilers since it's a fairly new movie, but the idea of the movie is going to be like your Banana Splits type scenario where he gets kind of trapped in this amusement park type setting, and he's been tasked with cleaning the place up, fixing it up to reopen it. And we learn that the animatronic dolls there's an alligator, there's a bear, there's like a turtle, there's all these weird like animals that are like animatronic, right? Well, they come to life at night or whatever, and they murder people. anyone's sight, they murder. I don't want to give away the plot, but we find out why, how, that whole thing. And it kind of makes sense in a roundabout kind of way. It's definitely supernatural in terms of an explanation, but it kind of works. I like Emily Tosta here. I didn't really know her prior to this. She's a great actress, and I thought she did a really good job as kind of the supporting role in this movie. Nicolas Cage has some of his Cage-isms in this movie, which you got to have in a Nick Cage movie. But there's a couple scenes with a pinball machine with him that were a lot of fun. And, you know, he does his overacting to great effect here. I had fun with it. I've seen a lot of hate for this movie among my friend group and online. But I gave it 3 stars over on Letterboxd, and I think it is a movie that I would probably rewatch. So I recommend, if you're a Nick Cage fan, you have to see it. Willy's Wonderland was my 16 for the month of June. My number 15 is a, I guess, romantic comedy called Together, Together. It's a new film. It's a 2021 film directed by a female, Nicole Beckwith. Stars Ed Helms of The Office fame, of course, and Patty Harrison, which is an actress I was not familiar with. Basically, the long story short version of this is that Ed Helms wants to have a baby, but he's in his 40s. He doesn't have a partner. Patty, who plays Anna in the film, is his surrogate, and she agrees to carry his baby for the cost of being a surrogate or whatever. And they develop a friendship over the course of the pregnancy that eventually leads to possibly more. And there's about a 20-year age difference. She's in her early 20s, he's in his mid-40s. So it kind of tells that story too, of like a May-December romance, but also tells the kind of important story of surrogacy and parenthood and what it means to be a parent. But I did like it mostly because of Patty Harrison. She gives a really timid, beautiful performance in this movie. You can see her innocence kind of on display here, where she's kind of in a rut too. I mean, she's in her early 20s, but she feels like she should have done more in her life. She's just kind of like, what am I doing? Why am I not in college? Why did I drop out? And she's making money doing the surrogacy thing, but she can't do that forever, and she kind of starts questioning that. Ed Helms comes into her life at the right time. I thought it was a decent movie. I just hated the ending. In fact, I was into this movie like 90% of it, and then the end of it, I was just like, what? Like, I don't want to give it away because it's a new film, but I just hated the way this movie ended. Together, Together ranks at 15 for me. As expected, I'm running a little long, guys, so I think I'm going to have to speed these up a little bit. All right, my number 14 is another 3-star film, and this would kind of go down as a short film. I'd say it's like 53 minutes, I think. But it's the lost movie of George A. Romero called The Amusement Park. So this is the film in the 70s that Romero did when he was in the middle of doing all of his zombie movies. That's a social commentary on growing old and on like ageism and elder abuse. The film is shot almost like a PSA, so it was tough because this was a film that did not have a narrative. Thank God it was under an hour long, because it would have driven me crazy. I love it for its historical value, like seeing what Romero made in that time frame in his life, and that he never got to release it, and then here it is released on Shudder, and they were able to restore it and put it out is amazing. I think that's awesome. A 4K restoration exists of this amusement park movie. The lost film of George Romero is a pretty big deal. But the story itself, kind of like the message, like it wore out its welcome pretty early. Like, this would have very easily, for me personally, been a very impactful film if it was just like 20 minutes long. Like, we could have gotten everything that Romero was trying to show us in like a true short film, like 15, 20 minutes. And it would have been very impactful, because there's no narrative in this movie. It's just this old man that we're following in this amusement park and how he's being treated by different people in society and cops and young kids and other elderly people. And it does give a commentary on what it must have been like, and frankly, what it probably still is like, if you're an older person in society. I want to say the lead character is probably in his 70s in this movie, and just has to go through a ton of stereotypes and ageism, and it's tough. And it is horrific, and you can see that it was probably personal to Romero, and that's why I gave it 3 stars. And I think if you're a fan of his, or a fan of like classic horror movies, then you probably should check it out. The Amusement Park is currently streaming over on Shudder. My number 13 was another big release that came out, I think, in May initially with Disney Premiere Access, and it may have gotten a limited theatrical release, but I just saw it in June, and it's Raya and the Last Dragon. It's another good animated film. It's not the best animated film I saw in June. Stay tuned. But it's a good one. I thought it was a little formulaic. And it's, I think of movies like Mulan and that kind of thing about the heroine and overcoming the odds. And was kind of predictable in that way, but the animation was beautiful, as it always is with Disney and or Pixar. But yeah, it's on Disney Plus right now. It's streaming. There's nothing new here. I kind of mentioned that with Wish Dragon earlier. It's like it's cool, and I enjoyed it, and I watched it with my kids, and they liked it. But there's nothing new here. It's kind of the same type of story. It's very predictable in that way. The arc is very similar to a lot of the other heroines that we've seen from like these Eastern stories. So Raya and the Last Dragon has beautiful animation. It has some funny moments. I do love Awkwafina being voice cast here as the lead dragon. I thought that was great. Kelly Marie Tran as Raya is, as we know from Star Wars The Last Jedi and some other stuff. So I thought the voice casting was great and the animation was stellar. Just the story was just kind of like middle of the road for me, and that's why it's a little bit lower for me. But there you have it, Raya and the Last Dragon. It's over on Disney Plus if you want to check it out with your family. At my number 12 is a film called Eat Wheaties. That comes to explanation as to what that means when you watch the movie. But it stars Tony Hale as a character who is kind of having like a midlife crisis. And he becomes obsessed with Elizabeth Banks, the actress. And he more so becomes obsessed with convincing his family and friends that he knows her and that he went to college with her. No one believes him. So the movie is him trying to convince people in his life and on social media that, hey, me and Elizabeth Banks know each other. If she comes to my college reunion, I'm going to show you. We're actually buddies. We know each other. And he's trying to reach out to her on Facebook in the movie. She won't respond to him. We as the viewer don't know if he's kind of like this weird kind of like pervy dude that like thinks he knows her or like he's a liar, like he wants to convince people, or does he actually? Like, we don't know, because Tony Hale really does sell this performance. Like, you really do think throughout the duration of the movie, like, yeah, of course he's telling the truth. And I won't tell you how it ends up playing out. I thought it was kind of cute how it actually ends up playing out. But why I thought this movie was great, too, is there's like I said it was a virtual who's who. I gave this 3.5 stars. But it's got Paul Walter Hauser, who I love. Alicia Cuthbert, I love her. She's in it. Alan Tudyk is in it. David Walton, Sarah Clark, Robbie Amell. A bunch of people are in this movie, and there's a lot of character actors that I don't even know their name, and I recognize in this movie as well. This movie's fun. It's weird, but I love that when filmmakers take chances. This is a very strange movie that had a really cute payoff at the end. The last 5 or 10 minutes of this movie, it did a great job of like tying it up in a big bow for us after kind of letting the mystery unravel in the previous 90 minutes. So I would say check out Eat Wheaties. I did watch it on demand, and I know it is available to rent on demand. But there you have it. So coming in at my number 11, 3.5 stars again over on Letterboxd. Where a lot of my movies this month were in that 3 to 3.5 range. At number 11 is another Hulu original that just came out last month called Plan B. This is a movie that is very similar style to Booksmart, Superbad, those type of sex teen comedies that follow a debauchery on one night, and that's kind of what Plan B is. So our lead character, who is an Indian actress that I was not familiar with, Kuhu Verma, plays Sunny. She's a high school senior who regrets something that she does at a party at her house one night when her mother's out of town. And as you could probably guess from the title of the movie Plan B and the movie poster that has the Plan B pill on it, that is the goal of their evening together. They're two best friends in the movie. The other friend is played by Victoria Morales. And the two of them just embark on this journey to find this pill to correct her mistake from a night that she wants to forget. And hilarity ensues. This is a funny movie. It is not for anyone under the age of like 17 or 18. A lot of sexual jokes and content in this movie. There's a couple dicks in this movie, actually penises on screen. So this movie goes for it, man. And because of that, I really appreciate it. And there is some hilarious one-liners that would speak to kids today and would also speak to old farts like me. There's one line in the movie, and I'll just leave it at this because this was by far my favorite, and I actually put it in my review. But one of her friends is like, yeah, I'm not pregnant. Do you have a tampon? Because it's like the elevator from The Shining down there. And that joke has like stuck with me. Like I had to pause it. I was laughing so hard. Such a great reference for us old people. And then some young people will get it as well. So Plan B, a Hulu original. I really enjoyed this movie. 3.5 stars I gave it over on Letterboxd. Go check it out. So we are into our top 10 now. My top 10 films in the month of June. At number 10 is the other one that was a blind spot for me. This is a 2012 movie. I recently did a episode with Alex from the Contrarians on my podcast for my top 5 raunchy sex comedies, and this was on his list, and I had never seen it, and he started giving me the cast, and I was like, what? And I actually watched it that night after we recorded. But it's a movie called Bachelorette. It stars Kirsten Dunst, Ela Fisher, and Lizzie Kaplan, as well as Rebel Wilson's in this film too. Luckily, I'm not a huge Rebel Wilson fan, so she had kind of a smaller role, luckily. Our 3 main characters are Dunst, Fisher, and Kaplan. Lizzie Kaplan from Party Down, from True Blood. I love her so much, and she is absolutely on fire in this movie. Just hilarious in this film. Kirsten Dunst and Ela Fisher I'm big fans of as well. And we get a bit of a Party Down reunion in this film because Kaplan's love interest in this movie is Adam Scott, who was her co-star in Party Down. So if you're a fan of that show, you'll love that little kind of reunion as well. And this was shortly after Party Down went off the air too, I believe. So yeah, it's from 2012. It's called Bachelorette. You can probably guess, but it just follows a night of these bachelorettes that are there for their friend's wedding, and the wedding dress ends up going missing, and the night is them trying to find it. Kirsten Dunst is the maid of honor, the other 2 are bridesmaids, and they're on a mission to find the wedding dress and save the wedding before the morning, before the sun comes up, and a lot of crazy shit happens. They end up at a strip club. Kirsten Dunst gets with a dude in the bathroom at the strip club. There's a lot of interesting things that play out in this movie, but the story between Kaplan and Adam Scott was beautiful. I loved it. And it was really funny. It was really short. It was less than an hour and a half. So if I'm not the only one, and for some reason you haven't seen Bachelorette and you love these kind of like raunchy comedies, then check out this movie because I really enjoyed it. My number 9 is a horror thriller film that I did a review for on this channel. I will put a card up here for you. I'm sorry, actually over here, I think. I honestly don't know, somewhere up here. But it's a 2021 film called Censor. It's a British horror film that takes place in the 1980s. Enid is our lead character, played by Niamh Elgar, and she did a fucking tremendous job in this movie. Such a layered performance, from like this dorky nerd girl to this like badass, like almost murderer by the end of the movie. Spoiler free, so I'm not going to give anything away, but you should watch it, especially if you like 80s horror in any way. I know it's a 2021 film, but it's shot like an 80s horror film. It's very gory. It shows footage from actual, what they call film nasties, which were like these underground videotapes that the MPAA and censors did not approve, but they still released kind of the uncut versions. And they were very brutal and very gratuitous, so they didn't get released. A lot of them still exist, and you can find them. They're called film nasties. Her job is to censor them and to tell the filmmakers what scenes to cut and what language to cut and that type of thing to get it a rating to where it can get put on the shelf or put in the theater. And we see a lot of footage from those different film nasties throughout. And what the filmmaker Prano Bailey Bond does here is she like incorporates the videotape footage and the actual footage from Enid's life, and they start to blend together to where you as the viewer are like, what the hell is happening here? Is this a movie? Is this her life? Does she believe that? Like, you know, so it's very like mind-bending that way. Again, check out my review of this film. It was one of my favorite movies that I saw this month. I just saw it about a week ago, and it's my number 9 for the month of June, Censor. Number 8's interesting because it's a film directed by Guy Ritchie called Wrath of Man. And it's interesting because if I didn't see on Letterboxd that it said directed by Guy Ritchie or in the credits when I watched it, I would have no idea that he directed this film. It is literally a one-off from his career. It's like, it does not look like a Guy Ritchie film at all. So what's interesting is if you're a Guy Ritchie fan, you can pick out those little things, like the humor and some other stuff that you like from his type of movies. But then you can also, if you don't like him, enjoy it because it doesn't look like one of his films anyway. It definitely doesn't play out as the flow is not the same for sure. It's a very straight A to B narrative. Jason Statham doing his damn thing in this movie. If you're a fan of Jason Statham, you absolutely have to see this movie. This is definitely one of his best performances in my opinion. It's a very quiet, subdued, badass performance, which of course he's known for. But yeah, he's this guy, you know, and this is in the trailer as well as in the description, so it's not really a spoiler. But the plot of this movie is that he's this guy who leads almost like a mafia gang. He's the leader of this mafia gang in LA. And there's this armored truck robbery that goes wrong, and his son ends up dying in during the robbery. And the rest of the movie is his determination to get revenge for his son. So he enters into this whole like world where he becomes an armored truck driver just to get into the facility, and like it's a lot of planning on his part and paying people off to get information. So you do have that kind of mystery playing out as well as to like who killed his son, what happened, is he going to get his revenge? But then you also have all these awesome action sequences and gunplay mixed throughout with Statham just kicking ass. A+ Statham in my opinion. I gave it 3.5 stars. I rented it because it was like a Prime Day deal actually, where it was like half off to rent it. So I rented it, and it's in theaters right now as well. Wrath of Man is my number 8 for the month of June. At number 7, a popular one, In the Heights, directed by John Chu. I will put a tag up here for you. I think it's right here. So you can go over there and check it out. I won't spend a ton of time on it because it's all in the review. I'm just not a musicals guy, guys. I just don't dig them typically. But every once in a while, a movie will come along that's a musical that I really like. I always point to La La Land because that's one of my favorite movies of the last 10 years. And In the Heights is not as good as La La Land in my opinion, but it's important because of the Latino representation, right? We don't get that. And I know that Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote the film, wrote the musical, has come under some fire for not including different types of that community or whatever. But just generally speaking, however you want to cut it, just in general, that Latino community doesn't get these big blockbuster movies where the predominant cast is of that nationality. So I think it's important for that reason, and that's one of the reasons I love it. And then on top of that, the movie that itself is really uplifting. The story is really uplifting. Like, you know, I have a hot take that I actually enjoy personally In the Heights more than Hamilton. And that is a hot take, and I don't know how many people would say that. But I actually like the songs in this a little bit more, and that could not, I don't want to say anything bad about Hamilton because it's amazing, but that could also be because Hamilton's hype was like literally like, I'd been hearing about it for like 3 years before I was able to see the tour of it when it came around to me locally. And I mean, I was like, okay, sure, that was fine. But it wasn't like, you know, the Wizard of Oz hype that I'd been hearing about it for 3 or 4 years. But In the Heights, you know, it did have its own set of hype as well because it got delayed and everything. But I just enjoyed the story a little bit more, which is weird too because I'm an American history buff, generally speaking. But yeah, check out In the Heights, guys. I want to say it's still on HBO Max for a little bit longer, and it is playing in theaters. It's a feel-good movie. The songs are great. We get some great performances in this movie. Obviously, Anthony Ramos is phenomenal in the lead role. And Melissa Barrera is an actress that you need to watch. She's going to be in Scream 5 next year, and she has a lot of projects coming up. She plays his love interest, Vanessa, in the film, and she did an amazing job as well. I loved In the Heights. It was one of my favorite movies in the month of June. My number 6 is another blind spot for me that I just saw a couple nights ago. A couple friends of mine recommended it. A couple patrons of my show recommended it. It's a film called Layer Cake that came out in 2004. I'd never seen this film. It's kind of a crime drama action film starring Daniel Craig. A lot of you probably know of it and have seen it, but I had never seen it. It's directed by Matthew Vaughn, who I like. He did the Kick-Ass films, which are high action, high caliber action. We don't get quite as much action in Layer Cake, at least until the last act of this movie. But Daniel Craig, early in his career in 2004, 18 years ago, you can kind of see the guy that's going to become James Bond and going to become a lot of these other characters that we love so much today. So that was really cool. And then there's a lot of cool, like, supporting roles that I didn't even expect to see either. Most notably, Tom Hardy's in this film. That's kind of like his side, you know, his right-hand man. Sienna Miller, who is just to die for, beautiful and such a good actress. One of my gripes with this film, actually, was that she was not in it enough. She was very sparse and kind of scattered throughout this film. Again, until we get to the last act, we have a little bit more of her. But she was my favorite part, and we just didn't get to see enough of her in this movie. But Layer Cake's a good film. I gave it 3.5 stars, and I'm glad that I corrected my blind spot of it. And thank you so much to my patrons who mentioned it to me over in the chat because I just watched it the other night. Layer Cake. All right, guys, here we go. My top 5 movies for the month of June. I'm going to try to get through this a little quickly. My number 5 is a movie I just saw last night as I'm recording this, and it is batshit crazy. It is an A24 film called Zola, starring Taylor Page and Riley Keough in our lead roles. This movie was a feast for the senses visually. The editing in this film is tremendous. One of the best edited films I've seen this year for sure. The music and the score were phenomenal. The sound mixing was great. All the technical aspects of this film, I just eat it up. But it's a very Magic Mike type story. Just crazier. A lot of crazy shit happens in this movie. It's brand new. It's actually only being released, I think, this Friday nationwide, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. And unfortunately, I haven't done a review of this film on this channel, but I will tell you that I love it. And Taylor Page is going to blow up after this. She's our lead, the black actress in this film, the lead. She's Zola in the movie, the title character. She is going to blow up. She absolutely killed this movie. And Riley Keough, who I was already a huge fan of, she was in The Lodge last year. She's been in a lot of films, and I really like her every time she pops up. She gives a very off-character performance in this movie. She is something completely different from who she is, but also who we've seen her portray. And she really embodies this character of this stripper / prostitute. And she brings Zola in on this adventure with her. Her pimp's in there. Again, there's a lot of crazy scenarios that play out that I don't want to give anything away, but a lot of very interesting things that if you take a fly on the wall aspect, will just be like, oh my God. Especially the last scene in the movie. I really like Zola. I didn't like it as much as I thought I would because I'm an A24 fanboy, to be honest. But I gave it 3.5 stars, and I think I definitely recommend it to anyone. Now, I will tell you that in my review, I put that it was hints of Spring Breakers, the Harmony Korine film, and Hustlers with Jennifer Lopez. So kind of those two together. People hate Spring Breakers. So if you're not into that kind of like scattered narrative and storytelling where it's just kind of like shit happening, but you don't really know why, then maybe stay away from it because it is very like manic and frantic in that way. But I love that type of filmmaking, and it really puts me as the viewer in that scenario. So I love Zola, my number 5 for June. So I mentioned Host earlier when I talked about Safer at Home, which I don't recommend. I do recommend a movie called Profile, and that's my number 4 for the month of June, a film that just came out as a brand new movie, at least here in the States. Letterboxd has it listed as a 2018 film. Again, I think this was a US release in 2021. But this is in the style of Host or Searching, where it's an entire film that plays out on a computer screen, or multiple computer screens and phones and that kind of thing. So we get to see this story told through this lens of this journalist who is acting as if she wants to be recruited by ISIS in an effort to get an interview, basically, of this ISIS leader in Syria. And so it's a very kind of like in the moment story too, with terrorism and everything else, especially when it was filmed apparently in 2018. So it was a very like timely movie, but it was also very like thrilling to watch because you see this kind of happening in front of you and you're like, oh God, please don't send that email, or please don't answer that text or whatever. And of course they always make the wrong decision, which then leads to a worse decision, and it just kind of snowballs into this whole thing. And this is in the trailer, so it's not too much of a spoiler, but the filmmaker does a nice job too of showing us how this journalist is actually falling for this terrorist. Or is she? You know what I mean? Is it a ruse for her to get him closer to her? And it's done really well where you don't really know until the end of the film and how it kind of ultimately plays out. And she's just a very tortured character that wants to do a good job, but she's becoming too close to the subject matter. Profile is it's a very thrilling movie, guys. If you like Searching, if you like Host, if you like those kind of movies that are told like in the found footage style, digital found footage is what I like to call them, then you got to look up Profile. It's one of the better movies I've seen this year, and it's my number 4 for the month of June. I gave it 4 stars, by the way, over on Letterboxd. So the rest of the movies on my list are 4-star films. I didn't have anything over 4 stars this month, which is a bit of a disappointment. But these top 3 are not. My number 3, I did a review for on this channel. I'll throw a card up here for you if you want to check that out. It's a romantic sci-fi comedy, I guess. And is that even a thing? Called Long Weekend. It stars Zoe Chow and Finn Wittrock in our lead roles. Finn Wittrock is down on his luck. He's ex-rehab. He's not taking his medication. He's lonely. He hates his life. Goes to the movies by himself one day and ends up meeting this girl named Vienna. And they decide to go out for a beer together, and then they basically end up spending the whole weekend together. I cannot give away the plot twist in this movie. You would not think with a romance film there would be a ton of plot twists, but that's what made this movie so enjoyable for me. It threw at least, off the top of my head, 3 curveballs at me, of which none I saw coming. So because of that, I feel like it's a very innovative and unique romantic comedy, because romantic comedies are extremely formulaic. They're literally all the same. Some dude at a train station playing a radio for some chick that he doesn't want to leave him. The Long Weekend is very different. It's that same like generic idea, but it plays out extremely differently. This is available on Amazon if you want to check it out right now. I highly recommend it. I just can't talk a lot about it because I don't want to give away these different plot developments that unfold, but it does have sci-fi built into it, and then you have the romance and the comedy aspect as well. Also, happy endings reunion in this movie for Damon Wayans Jr. and Casey Wilson. They play their friends that are kind of like the supporting roles in the movie, and they were fucking hilarious in this movie. Long Weekend is one of the better romantic comedies I've ever seen, to be honest, in that genre. And it was definitely one of the best movies I saw in the month of June. Is my number 3. My number 2 is the highest rated animated film, Disney Pixar's Luca. This was a beautiful story of this young boy who's a sea monster, but it's kind of the Little Mermaid. It's kind of the story, really here. He wants to go to the surface, guys. He wants to see what's up there, better up there. And he wants to go to land. When he's on land, he takes on the human form. He meets another sea monster / boy, and they just kind of enter into these adventures together on land. It takes place in Italy, and it's a very beautiful story of friendship. And I don't even have to tell you about the animation. It's available on Disney Plus, and they didn't even do premiere access for this one. They just released it to any Disney Plus subscribers. So if you have Disney Plus, I say check out Luca, especially if you have a family. It's such a beautiful story of friendship. Jacob Tremblay is the lead character, does the voice casting in that role, and I thought it was cast very well. We have the parents of the sea monster here who, it's a classic story, right? You can't go up there because the humans are the monsters. We're not the monsters, they are. I hate that kind of tired narrative, but with such a cute familial story, it works. It's just so like innocent and cute that you can't like be mad at it for telling that kind of basic story. It's not the best Pixar. When I ranked my Pixar films, I want to say this was like in the middle, maybe like 11 or 12 area of the 23 films. So it's right in the middle, but it is one of the better offerings that we've gotten in the last 3 or 4 years from Pixar. And I do like that they released it on Disney Plus to kind of get it onto more eyeballs. But I say check out Luca. It's a very, very beautiful, kid-friendly film that you can watch with the whole family. And it's my number 2 for the month of June. All right, guys, we finally made it to my number 1 ranked movie for the month of June that I saw for the first time, which actually is a new movie. It's a 2021 film directed by Mikey Alfred, a first-time director, and it is a film called North Hollywood. Again, I did a review of this movie on my channel. Here's the tag for it if you want to check it out. This is a beautiful movie. It's a skater comedy. It's a skater coming-of-age comedy. This guy, portrayed by Ryder McLaughlin, wants to be a pro skateboarder. His dad, portrayed by Vince Vaughn, to tremendous effect, by the way. I loved Vince Vaughn in this movie. Wants him to either go to college or get a job to make his way. He thinks pro skating is a pipe dream, no pun intended, that will never go anywhere. And as a father, you side with that. Having kids, I side a little bit with Ryder's character too. Like, I want my kids to chase their dreams. I want them to try to achieve their dreams. But as a father, I'm going, I don't know, is it really best for you to try to make it as somebody riding a skateboard in a skate park? I don't know if that's the best plan for you. So as an adult, I got to see both sides of that, and it played really well. It's also really funny. There's a lot of great coming-of-age comedy in this movie, and there's actually pro skaters scattered throughout this movie. A ton of cameos from actual skateboarders. There's a cameo from Sonny Sulchick, who was in mid-90s, and it has a very similar narrative to mid-90s because in that movie, it just took place in the 90s, but it was basically the same thing where Sonny wanted to be a skateboarder and his parents wanted him to focus on school. I think it was maybe his mom in that movie. But they're very similar in that way. So in North Hollywood, you get the skateboarding aesthetic, kind of like of LA, which is really cool. You get the coming-of-age story, which I love a good coming-of-age story. And then you get some of these powerhouse performances that were really unexpected, particularly Vince Vaughn. And who else is really, really good in this is Miranda Cosgrove, who we know from iCarly. She popped up and like, what the hell is iCarly? What's Carly doing here? But she did great in this movie. She really blew me away. I did not expect her to be as good in a role like this as she was. but she plays his love interest in the film. I highly, highly recommend North Hollywood, obviously, as it was my #1 movie this month. I gave it 4 stars over on Letterboxd. Guys, there you have it, the Letterboxd lowdown. I went way too long again, and I apologize. I'm going to try to figure out how to narrow these down, but I will put chapter breaks down below in the comments if you want to skip forward to see the different entries. Please feel free to do so, and please comment below with what your favorite first-time watch in the month of June was. Please let me know, and please subscribe to this channel. I will see you at the end of July when I do my next Letterboxd lowdown right here in the garage.